Remember this thing? Remember that? Remember that? Remember this yoke? I pre-ordered this a year ago now. A year ago at E3, $120. It's the first time I picked it up in 6 months. Hey, what's up? E3, it's back. It's happening it's Thursday now, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 3 days time, we'll already have 2 press conferences done and dusted. By this time next week, the show will be wrapping up. Actually, it's Thursday after 5 here. So, yeah, it's upon us, and this is my 4th E3. I never thought I'd get to see. I always thought I'd get to see one. I never thought I'd get to see one as the press. And I'm very lucky to be able to say this will be my 4th. I've 2 with the UK team, and this will be my 2nd with the US team. And I am fucking excited. It's the best week in games coverage by a mile. It's hard, but it's brilliant. It's like, it reminds me of when I used to work in theater, when like the tech rehearsal was just really, really difficult, and then once you got the first show done, it was just easy peasy. So like the past couple of weeks have been pretty hard for everyone at GameSpot, mostly preparing for the show, and it's gotta suck during the press conferences. There's so much work, and then for me at least, once the show starts and I'm on stage, it's like, it's hard, but it's fine, in the flow. And a lot of that has to do with the preparation, and I've never done this before. I'm going to be bringing my camera down to record a bunch of behind the scenes stuff, but I'm also going to sort of peel back the curtain on preparation for E3 as well, what that entails. And I've also asked a bunch of people, I asked Twitter for some questions as well, and I got a bunch of those, just sort of how we cover it, how the event is, and all that sort of stuff. So I'm going to get into that as well. So first things first, my bag's down there. I'm hopping into Jeff Gersman's car Saturday morning. The 2 of us and Alex are driving down, which is part of this old GameSpot tradition where there was 1 year that I think it was LAX or something, the flights weren't taking off and they all had to drive the stuff back up, and it became like this sort of journey that everyone started to take. I think, was it Ryan Mack then used to drive the truck down every year, and then some other ones would go like almost like a convoy. So I remember like hearing about this and like watching videos about it and stuff when I was in Ireland, and I was super surprised and delighted when Jeff asked me to go. I guess this will be my 3rd year driving down. We went down with Alex the first year and Greg, and then I think it was just Riker was last year, and then it's just the 3 of us this year, and it's great. And it's not just great because it's fun, and we stream. Jeff streams it on Mixlr, so you can listen into the whole 7-hour journey. But it's like exactly what I fucking need going down there, because E3 is like, it's like 2 things. E3 is like really, really busy, and it's also like, for me, it's incredibly solitary. Like, I basically work on my own for about a week. That's not the case for everyone else, because we have people editing and producing, and they're constantly working in tandem and stuff. But all I do is host. At E3, I don't even like produce the shows that are being hosted. I have nothing to do with how they're set up or how they're run on the day. I turn up and I ask questions. So it's essentially an exercise in me like preparing for the next day, preparing for the next day, preparing for the next day. And that's what I've been doing already. So today, for instance, I spent 4 hours preparing my notes day by day. I've got 2 press conferences on Sunday I'm hosting, hosting GameSpot's pre and post show. And 2 on Monday, including an appearance on Jeff Keighley's YouTube Red stage, which is over on LA Live. Then I'm hosting the GameSpot stage for like, I think it's 3 hours Tuesday, and then 3 hours on the co-op stage, and then 4 hours Wednesday, and then 3 hours on the co-op stage, and then 1 hour on GameSpot, 3 on the co-op stage, and 2 at the end. So I'm basically doing 7 hours of hosting every day. For those of you who don't know, we have 2 stages this year. We had 2 stages last year, but they're kind of on the same thing downstairs. This year, our downstairs thing, this doesn't matter to you actually if you're not going to E3, I guess, but the show floor stage is basically, it's called the co-op stage. It's basically a bunch of other websites coming on to do bits on our stage, and with GameSpot people involved, and it's mostly like just, you know, chatting, and it's like streaming talk shows basically, just not with any developers. It's all just people talking about influencers, talking about video games. So I'm going to be on that every once in a while. I'm on with the guys from Screw Attack, which is good because I get along with Craig really well. And then I'm on with the folks from Critical Role, who I like a lot. We had them in the lobby a couple of months back, so that should be fun. I'm off with Jeff Canada as well at one stage on Monday, which should be fun. But then the lion's share of my time is upstairs. which is what I really like doing, which is interviewing developers. So I have a big sheet full of all the games I'm going to see, and there are games there that I know fucking loads about, and then there's games like Final Fantasy 15, which I think that might be on there. I'm not sure. There are games like, there's always a JRPG I don't know, and there's a bunch of them this year. So I was filling in notes for stuff that I do know. Like there are I don't want to say any of them now because I'm not sure which ones are embargoed or which ones aren't yet, so I'm just going to keep stum. But this year is a bunch of like really big developers coming on, a couple of developers that I've always wanted to talk to and never got a chance to, which I'm very excited about. Some other folks who have sort of gotten to know me over the years, and that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of those folks. We're also going to have, you'll have your PR person coming on with a game that you maybe don't know all that much about. We also have things like unannounced, Microsoft Project D and unannounced Nintendo Game 1 and Bethesda. So it's like, you don't know what actually they're going to announce or anything. Some of the stuff on there is like stuff that we know that people don't know, but a lot of it isn't. So I can prepare only so much, and then obviously when stuff is announced, even if you do know what it is, the questions around those change as well. So my experience once I get down there, sorry, this is why I was talking about why it's so nice to go down on the drive. One is because you get to talk to a bunch of people for 7 hours, a bunch of people who know a lot more about video games than you do, with Alex and Jeff. And I also just get to chat with friends for like a couple of hours, and then it's like work. Then for me anyway, it feels like, okay, get to business. So I've got a like shit ton of business cards. I will be talking to people and networking and telling them about the videos we do on GameSpot and being like, hey, you want to do some of those? I will be doing a lot of preparing for the next day. I'll be doing a lot of watching streams. I'll be watching stuff that I missed while I was on other streams, catching up. I hardly ever go out ever. I think at E3, traditionally what I've always done is I've maybe had a drink or two some nights. Behind our hotel, all the GameSpot people get together every night, and all the camera ops and editors and stuff, and usually give it pretty large. Because I'm on stage, I can't do that. I need to be super fucking sharp at 9 in the morning. So in the past, I've had like 1 or 2 drinks and then done it. Like last year, I don't think I had any. I think the past 2 years, I haven't had any. And especially this year, obviously I'm not drinking at all, so that's going to be super cool. And I'm actually going to sort of, there's 2 other things I'm doing this year which I've never done before. One is that I'm going to make sure I exercise every morning before the show starts, so I'm going to get extra early sleep if I can do it. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get a lot of my own food, because the problem is that we're staying in a hotel, and hotels are, it's great, and we're very fortunate to be in this hotel, but hotel food is, especially in LA, is just like stodgy burgers and sandwiches and shit that just like fills your stomach up and gives you no energy. We have catering on site, same sort of problem. A lot of fried food in the morning, a lot of yellow shit, a lot of beige food, and yellowy dark food. So I'm gonna try and figure out some way. I've been looking up a place in LA to try and give that a go, to be like, okay, if I do my usual thing where I'm just working and I'm not really going out to parties or anything like that, and then I also completely eradicate drink, which I have done the past 2 years. I've gone out to the GameSpot party at the end, but I'll do that this year, but I won't drink. And then if I also like add in exercise and take away all the dirty convention food, I wonder if it'll help. And I hope it does, because I'm actually going off on a trip, to hang out with the in-laws. In like immediately afterwards, I'm flying back on Thursday and then flying out again, or Thursday, Friday, and then flying out to the east coast of the States. So yeah, that should be fun. But to answer, I'm gonna get into some of these questions in a second, and to be honest, I've completely lost my fucking train of thought, because as I was doing that, I was thinking about questions I was going to ask somebody. And that's what it's kind of like, is that like I'm gonna go for a run in a few minutes as the sun's come out, and all that I think about for the past sort of 4 or 5 days and for the next week is questions and like angles that I'm missing and stuff like that, because getting people on the stage is like an opportunity to make a really good impression with them. It's also an opportunity to get headlines for our news team, and it's obviously, I need to make sure it's entertaining for people who are wanting to watch hour after hour after hour. No more than now, considering, I mean, there was a time when GameSpot was the only production company at E3 showing it back when nobody gave a flying fuck about video games. Certainly not video and video games. GameSpot were flying that flag real hard. Then it was IGN sort of getting involved. We've had Twitch sort of doing some stuff over the past couple of years. They've gotten better. YouTube are doing their own thing as well. And then you have like big media companies are just in now, and YouTubers and all that sort of stuff. So we're competing with a lot of different people. So I need to make sure that our stage has the edge of, yo, this is being manned by somebody who actually knows what the fuck video games are, which I feel like is, you know, I don't feel like I'm bigging myself up doing that. I think obviously the Giant Bomb stage has that in spades, but so many of the stages are manned by people who don't, that I like our stage to be like, oh, we're not going to like softball PR people for 7 hours. We're actually going to have conversations about fucking video games. So the way that I can facilitate that is to write down notes, and I have like 12 pages of notes already, exhaustive lists on all, and like going back, it's like I have a certain game on the stage which I have not played in a couple of years, so I went back and played that game, so I now can ask questions about that game. So if you want to look at my Steam library, you might be able to see some of the games that are coming up, but on my PlayStation 4. So there's a lot of like preparation like that. I take it really seriously because it's a super privileged job to have, and if I'm not doing it right, I don't think I should be doing it. Okay, so I'm gonna jump into some of the Twitter questions that are here. Callum Moore asking, "Hey Danny, how much content is pre-planned before the show, and how much is created on the fly at the show floor?" So quite a lot is prepared ahead of time, with a means to then jumping on stories as they break. So our production is set up ahead of time really well. So we have stage shows. A good way of explaining this actually is, say, the upstairs stage show where we have all the demos. That is booked ahead of time. So we are booking those slots. There are some companies that want to book a slot but can't tell us what they are, what the game is, and you use best, practices with that. If it's a big company, if it was an id Software, or if it was a Naughty Dog, you would go like, yes, of course, you can have the slot, go for it. Obviously, that might not be the case for every studio. So then downstairs, because a lot of the conversations down there, a lot of the features that they want to break out, and Chris Waters is managing this stage. Because of that, we won't know what those stories are until we have a fair idea. We don't know exactly what those stories are, and we won't know until, Monday, Sunday, Monday, very much Monday, and then, getting into sort of Tuesday. I guess we'll know pretty much everything by Monday, because all the big conferences will be wrapped up by then. So for that, we have like, maybe here's a Sony hardware section, because that's probably going to be a thing, right? Maybe there's a Microsoft one. But there's always an element of like changing the production ahead of time for that. Or changing production in the moment after that news breaks. So that's only our live video team. Then we have like a video team who is going to be like breaking out the press conferences. So all that stuff's pre-planned production wise. We're like, who's going to be recording where it's going to go, who we're going to hand that video off to, who's making the thumbnail, who's got the titles and descriptions, who's publishing it to the site, who's pushing it to YouTube. All those lanes are planned ahead of time. Then you have the editorial department. So you have folks who are going to appointments. You have editors who are going to appointments, who are going to play games, or going to talk to somebody about a game. Maybe that game will be playable after all, after the fact that they told us it wasn't. Maybe we'll be able to get capture for that game. They say we can't, but maybe we still will be able to get capture, because sometimes you just turn up and they're like, yeah, fucking capture it. And then we do it, and then IGN don't ask, and then we have the gameplay. So there's loads of... we plan for that stuff as well, where those appointments are locked down. Everyone has their timetable and they know where they are on what stage, and then we pal those people up with video producers, and then we make sure everyone's got the right capture equipment, the right like everything they need just in case. And then there's the news department, who are going to be writing news the whole time and making news videos, and then writing news, and then writing reaction pieces, and then writing lists about the things we think about it, and our the stories that knock on from stories, because we have to think, okay, if that's happening, then this is probably not happening, so we have to write that story. So it's basically like the GameSpot war room upstairs is a really well-oiled machine, which has been doing this for a long time, and is set up to capture as much news as possible, but then obviously we can't plan for what that news is. But the idea is that with all that planning, then you're basically set up to be able to cover it as well as possible. So that's kind of it. We plan quite a lot, but then we plan so that on the day we are loose and fast enough to be able to get that stuff done properly. How do you keep yourself entertained while waiting on stuff like the Jeff Car Drive or press conferences to start? I mean, you're full of a room. Sorry, this is Rurs asks this over Twitter. You're full of a room with other people who care about video games, and then also the show floor is there. The worst thing about covering E3, from my perspective, or about hosting it, is I don't actually get to see that much of E3. I usually get an hour or maybe 2 hours every year to like wander around and actually see the show floor. I mean, the games come to me on the stage, so it's not that big a deal. Often I get to play games when they, usually there's like 1 or 2 games. I think I got to play 1 PS4 game and 1 Xbox One game the year they were both announced, because there was like 2 dev kits came up on stage, and I got to, that's what the PS4 controller feels like. Whereas like all of the editorial team had used both multiple times by the end. But there's plenty of things to entertain yourself. Like, I'm looking at my timetable. I am doing a full 8-hour day of talking on Tuesday, and after that I'm going to go home and drink like milk and honey and not fucking talk to anyone and do research and listen to music in my hotel room, and then wake up the next day and do it again. Or maybe I'll go meet somebody for lunch in the industry or dinner in the industry maybe that night, but like I won't, you're not bored at E3. I'll say that. And if you are, then it's a moment you've been so busy for the previous 10 hours that like fucking sit there and daydream. Like that'll be fine, or like have some food or something like that. David Fetterman, here's my question. Do you ever get to give devs meaningful feedback during E3, or are the conversations totally a one-way street? So, like, feedback isn't really important to developers, like, really ever. Like, they know. Like, developers know what's wrong with their games. And especially at E3 when they're showing stuff which is so far from being launched, then... like, not really. Like, it is generally a one-way street. The problem that most interviewers have is that they just ask the same questions and don't ask questions based off the replies. So, like, keeping it conversational, not just, like, handing the microphone to the other person and saying, give me your PR shtick, is, like, critical to, like, hosting a proper stage show. But yeah, like, sometimes you have a chat about stuff, but I don't think E3 is necessarily the best place for that, because the interviews are also, like, really short. They're, like, 20-minute interviews, so it's not like, going to Blizzard and recording 8 hours of interviews. Like, this is really, like, hot and fast stuff. You're interviewing, like, 3 people every hour, so it's not, my job is not to give my opinion in those situations. My job is to get as much information out of that person as possible. So the less time I'm speaking, the better. And in fact, one of the things I've been practicing a lot over the past year has been answering questions with as little as little words as possible. I'm quite mouthy, so that's been a sort of something I'm going to employ a lot more this year. Max Brandon, what do all you media folks do after the floor closes for the day? Sleep, video prep for the next day, blow off stress at bars? I mean, a lot of people blow off stress at bars. A lot of the industry is, because you have a lot of, it's a trade show, so the media is a very small segment, or like is a minority segment of E3. It's predominantly business and developers and publishers and trade people. So that goes from like GameStop employees to distribution houses to, anything to do with marketing or PR. And then you've got the developers meeting with them, and then the publishers meeting with them. So there's a lot of like deals going on, a lot of business meetings happening around the place. So they're meeting at bars and then they're hanging out afterwards. There's not all that much to do around LA Live except fucking drink and go to clubs, I guess. So that's what a lot of them tend to do, or go downtown and do that as well. Media folks, it splits the difference. Some people do a lot of networking, and some people do networking, which is just them getting drunk and they call it networking. Some people prep for the next day. I mean, there's a lot of people who work at GameSpot who will keep working until 2 a.m, especially a lot of the video team, especially a lot of the video, like some of the editing team, but mostly like Eric Tay, who like will be running cables and making sure that everything's working, like making sure the internet is working for 60 people or whatever. Like, he will likely be working crazy hours. The folks who put stuff up on YouTube will be working insane hours as well, I'm sure. Publishing, like, so it depends for each person, to be completely honest. I tend to work very tightly packed. It's the same attitude I kind of have at work work at work. I never stay late if I can help it. If I'm staying late at work, it means I'm inefficient. So I go in, I do my fucking job, I try as hard as possible, and then once the show is over, once the stage closes, I get on a cab, I go back home, I go back to the hotel, I get some food, and I prepare for the next day because I need to decompress to be able to do it again the next day. So it's different for each person. I mean, the one thing I do is I like to go to the Giant Bomb set and watch what's going on there and meet like some of my mates there. But then I often just go back to the hotel and watch the show there. So I'll try and go to the Giant Bomb show once at least. And then we have the GameSpot wrap party, but that's on Thursday night. So yeah, We'll see about that. Eric Van Allen asks, how does your show coverage differ from others? What makes the way GameSpot/Danny covers E3 unique? I mean, a lot of what we do, other people do. It's just that they do it differently. Like, there are people in this industry who are hosts who are like far more notorious and famous than I am, who do this stuff and do it in a great way that's their own way. But like the way I want to do it is I want to actually like get news out of people. I want to engage with them, like actually fucking talk to them about their video game and have them wake up. My favorite thing, and like I made a point of it when I first came over here, and I'm very proud of this, and this is probably going to sound like blowing smoke up my arse, but the best thing ever is when you have a developer come on stage, especially somebody who's like a mouthpiece for it, like a Blazinski or a, you know, Vince Zampella or something like that, who comes on and expects this to be another, oh, it's an interview with like a mainstream games outlet, and then you like sting them with like actual knowledge and questions. And the knowledge thing's difficult because you really shouldn't spend that much time trying to prove to the interviewee that you're clever. Like that is like one of the like most obvious pitfalls of interviewing. But for the longest time, I really felt like my first like 2 or 3 questions really needed to be like well delivered and hit the mark properly, so I could like fucking wake them up and be like, oh, we're actually having a chat about games, in the way that like when people go on Giant Bomb and they know they're going to talk to Jeff, like they don't come on like with their shtick, like they know what the fuck that is. So like for the longest time, I really tried to make sure that like that was the case, and when people come on here, like they know. So I think now that's easier. Like a lot of people come to the stage and know my stuff, and I know a lot of the developers, so that's easier. But I think like the thing that makes, I mean, our downstairs stage is going to be basically, I think, what a lot of other companies do now, what like Twitch does, and what like, you know, Kind of Funny and Funhouse and all these people do. Like it's that type of like, this is us talking about games and we're at E3. Like you can fucking do that at home, really. Like what I'm really like doing, especially with the upstairs stage, is actually having like real conversations about games. So I think in that way, we're still one of the only people that do it. IGN do it downstairs. I don't watch the show during E3 because I'm so busy, and I haven't watched it after the fact. And they have some great folks, like great entertaining folks on there as well. And then they also have like folks like Ryan McCaffrey who are able to, who know a lot about games. But I think there is an apex of knowledge and like I don't know, like having real conversations with human beings that I can hit that I don't think a lot of people are able to, or at least not in like that 20-minute thing. So that's what I kind of feel is our unique selling point at GameSpot, and also sort of my unique selling point. This really does sound like I'm blowing a lot of smoke up my arse, so I'm going to stop there. Anthony McSweeney, fantastically Irish name. With all of the stories and rumors you guys are privy to, are there any real surprises at E3 for you in the games media? Fucking loads. Like most of them. Most of the rumors that we hear are the same rumors you hear. Like, and that has never been more true than like today, when like games websites write the news based off of what they read on NeoGAF and fucking Reddit. Like, it's not like it used to be the other way around, but now it's completely like we are seeing the rumors at the same time as you. There is like a small percentage of the overall, you know, rumors going into E3 that only people in the games press know about. But, like, often that shit's wrong, and it's never the big stuff. Like, last year, I had been told by a bunch of people that Skyrim Remastered was coming. I was fucking waiting for it. Never turned up. I didn't know anything about Shenmue or The Last Guardian or, like, any of that stuff. So, like, no. Like a lot of the leaks that get floated around, Final Fantasy VII one, that one for instance. I think everyone in the war room knew about Final Fantasy VII and had an inclination about The Last Guardian maybe like 2 hours beforehand or something. But like, even then, like so often this stuff is wrong that you can never ever ever bank on it. So no, it's not really like that at all. We are way closer to all of you folks in what we do and do not know. And you know what? Like there are like Jeff Keighley of the world who probably have a way more insight than I do. And like, you know, have a better eye for, like Gerstmann has a great eye for what could or may not be happening. So they probably have more insight into like folks like me, but like generally no, the Games Press doesn't have like this secret window because they'd fucking leak it. We're the worst people at leaking things. Games Press, Jesus. Mijo, how much time is spent seeking things out versus folks coming to you to promote? Are you often surprised by exploring the floor? Not as much as I am at like PAX. Like everything at E3 is a known quantity. Even the indie games, you know ahead of time. You know what's there. Like people don't really like. Nobody goes to E3 and then starts pitching things to the press. If you don't have an appointment before E3 starts, no press is going to see you. Like it's not like they're walking around like PAX so they have an open room. Like they have rooms with timetables, and because all of the press have like rigid timetables where they have to be at this side of the hall at 2 and this side at 1, like there's no room to like wander into a place or go exploring really. Like I said, I get an hour usually, maybe 2 hours max of actually getting to walk around. And if I do that, there's no way I can get in a line, and there's still lines, you know, because you've like thousands of GameStop employees and loads of random people, and like people get in who aren't working in the press. Like there's plenty of public people there. I have friends who go to the show who get tickets the way they know how to get tickets in LA, and you know, so there's plenty of that stuff still going on. But you know, I don't really get I like exploring the floor because it's like fucking hell, I'm at E3, it's like really cool. But no, you don't tend to get like surprises, Mijo. It's not like PAX where you stumble across an indie gem in the indie mega booth. You know, the indie section in Sony's, you know, area, which will be right across from where the game spot stage is. Almost at GameStop. I'll know all the games on that already, pretty much. So it's not like that, and you would too. Like they're not like crazy obscure things. How is the team divided to cover it in parallel, I presume? How does Kind of Funny fit into it? Thanks. So that partner stage is basically just like they're coming on to host the show for a number of hours. So Kind of Funny is doing a chunk of a day, like most of a day. Screw Attack is doing most of a day. And the way I guess that, like I'm not involved in setting that up. Chris Waters is the man with the plan over there. But basically we have the stage, we have the internet connection, we have the means to do this, we have the presence. We don't have the people to cover 2 stages for 2 days. You know what I mean? Like it'll be myself, Lucy, and who else is upstairs? Oh, I forget. Upstairs, and then you'll have like we have editors, like everyone who comes on the lobby usually, right? They're off at appointments, so we don't have people to cover 2 stages. So what else do? You get in a bunch of people who have worked with us in the past, right? So that's what I mean. Kind of Funny last year ran a stage, so they're going to run a bit this year. But like that stuff, like I think all that stuff's getting streamed on GameSpot, but also like on their individual Twitch streams. So it's not like a lot of that is getting pulled onto GameSpot either. I mean, I guess the video breakouts are, but I mean, yeah, it's you know, in terms of actually the production of getting the stuff up, it's not that difficult. I think the biggest problem what we'll have, and every game site has this, is that you get so much information that you're not really sure how to like prioritize any of it, right? It's easy on the Monday because it's just press conferences and all this news is dropping and we can kind of tell which is the big stuff. But when you're, you know, you have like a section downstairs of a bunch of the Kind of Funny guys doing this, and then upstairs we had like a PR person for this game that's kind of hot but not really, like difficult to sort of see how we like to highlight that stuff on the homepage. Not my job. I'm glad I'm out of the world of web development, but yeah, it's crazy. I mean, by the time E3's finished, like E3 finishes, we're like working. There's no like slowdown. It's like work, stop. Like stop because get out, because they shut the convention center and all the Teamsters come in and like pull everything out, so you need to like be done. Yeah, and then there's like hardly any time to like actually sit back and do a post-mortem of any of it, at least not for a week. So yeah, it's crazy busy. That's how Kind of Funny fits in. I hope I answered that question. And then last question here. When was your first E3 and how has that experience changed since then? My first E3 this year is 2016. My first E3 was 2012 then, I guess. If this is my 4th? Yeah, 2011, August 2011 I started at GameSpot. And yeah, so I guess it's then. How it's changed? How it's changed mostly is Twitch and YouTube are big things. Back then, even though GameSpot wasn't the craziest popular website in the world, it was more, you know, there wasn't that many players in the games covering world, whereas now there's loads. And I think E3 is probably the one where you get the least amount of Twitch people and YouTubers, because it's not their conversation, it's not what they're used to talking about. They can do that stuff from home. They're not, like, the one thing that, you know, you don't get on a lot of YouTubers on Twitch is people who know how to talk to developers or know how to talk to adults. Like, know how to have insightful conversations about games that aren't about what they think, but it's about what asking the other person thinks. So I think in that way, GameSpot is more protected on E3 than we will be at something like PAX, for instance, which is about those people going out, playing those games, and then talking about their own experiences with them. I mean, Giant Bomb is a perfect example of a site that does both, right? Like, they're able to interview people, and they also have insightful thoughts about games. So I think that's probably been the biggest change for, at least from what I've seen, is that, like, there's more players in that pool. E3 is probably the one that affects us the least, but it's still like a stark thing, especially with all the different stages that sort of appear up. I remember when Twitch started their stage, it was like, oh, that's interesting. And like Carnage is going to be doing some crazy show before the press conferences and stuff. So, like, it's I think that's probably it. And apart from that, like, obviously this year's going to be weird with EA, Activision not being there. Like, Nintendo are there, the usual. They're not doing their conference again, but they've still got this massive booth on the floor. So. And they're basically still there, but yeah, having that stuff is a bit different. And I guess the increased amount of press conferences on the Sunday is probably the big change as well, where we're getting more of the big news then and less stuff trickling out on Tuesday and Wednesday, because by then everyone knows, and Thursday, because the show runs for 3 days. All those press conferences happen before the show opens. Like, show opens on Tuesday. It's mental, but by Monday night we know everything. But then, from watching everyone else cover the show, that has always been the way E3 has ebbed and flowed. It's always changed and had this, like, strange, like, morphing quality to it. Like the year at Santa Monica, it was just on a pier, and it was not that big show, and nobody thought it was a big, massive event anymore. And then people were like, oh shit, we need to make it big again. So I guess it's always been morphing, and I haven't really been there long enough to see how it is in the grand scheme of things, but, like, mostly it's the same. It's the same two halls. PlayStation's in the same place every year. Microsoft's still there behind our booth. Atlas is beside us here. There's the other hall I hardly get to see. Kensha Hall I've never been to because it's a car park. Yeah, so it's E3. You should go. Try and get there if you can. Sneak a ticket. If you know anybody who works in video production in LA or animation or anything, they can sort you out. Okay, I'm gonna stop talking now because honestly my voice is hoarse and that's not a good sign before E3. Thank you so much for all the questions. I'm fucking really excited. I got my business cards, I got my contact lenses, I got my underpants in that bag. I'm gonna find some hot, nice food. I'm gonna say bye to the cats. No Tournament of Lies this week, apologies, or next week actually now, because E3 I'm just too busy. James and Dennis were ready, but I wasn't, sadly. James lives in LA though, so I'll be hanging out with him one of the days, hopefully. Grab dinner or something. Yeah, and there'll be no streams, obviously, next week, because I will be streaming from twitch.tv/GameSpot and GameSpot.com Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week for something like 30 hours. Whew. Alright, I'm going to get some sleep and relax. Play some video games. Got some video games to play. Adios. If you have any more questions, put them down below. Alright, I'm out of here.